Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me, in the series Freemasonry and Satanism, number 67, part 3, the last part of this book. Only touched the surface on this subject. I could read everything in here, it's so important. But at some point, I gotta say no. Move on to the next book. So I'll just go through slowly from the front of the book this time. I started from the rear of the book, then I went to the middle of the book, and now I'm in the front. The Ultimate World Order, as pictured in the Jewish Utopia by Robert H. Williams. The Jewish Utopia, discovered by the author in an unlisted Jewish collection in the library of the University of Texas, is the authentic and complete plan of the Zionists for world domination. Wow. That's worth reading. It pictures the ultimate new social order which the Zionists hope to establish after they have used communism, democracy, and a third world war to gain their ends. If you're paying attention to the news these days, September 2015, seems like they're well on their way. The Ultimate World Order is an analysis of the Jewish Utopia with photographs, excerpts from the original text. Pause it, read it. I don't make this stuff up. The Ultimate World Order, which is a review by Robert H. Williams of the book published by Professor Higger called The Jewish Utopia. If the communists think they're going to conquer all the nations and set up a world government under a dictator of their own choosing, they may be in for a surprise. For their parent, so communism has a parent, somebody above it. The sect which originally launched the communist movement is an offshoot to accomplish a specific and temporary purpose. Has plans for an ultimate world order of its own. And this sect, commonly called Zionist, now vastly overshadows the much cruder communist machine in skill, finance, and organization and influence. They even have a Zionism of America organization in the United States called ZOA. They're right out in the open about it. And if you understand what Zionism is, to rule the world from Mount Zion in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv in Israel, they're just open about it. And I guess it's so far-fetched most people just don't believe it. Or maybe people are just dumbed down so much they don't have the intelligence to comprehend it. The communist plan for rubbing out all national, gotta get my reading correct here, religious, cultural, and racial lines and submerging the world in formless, characterless chaos for easy domination is grandiose enough. Most of us are too busy with our humdrum routines to pull the propaganda curtain aside and see the giant hiding there. I began studying the communist movement. I noticed a hint that communism was not to be the ultimate world order. Heinrich Heine, German Jewish poet and communist youth leader of the 1830s and 1840s, friend and co-revolutionary of Karl Marx, spoke of communism as temporary. Communism is the parent of socialism, and that's the parent of democracy. The United States is supposed to be a republic. But when you have democracy where everybody votes, and you have newspapers and television and radio shows controlled by the Zionists, the evil ones, then what the people know is what they are told. And you can make them believe anything. You just put it on the radio as if it's the truth, or the TV, or the nightly news. Like 911. Most people with any common sense watching all three buildings, 3, not 2, just free fall. And then that one demolition expert, Danny, who said that, and 7 days later or whatever, he's dead. They're killing people all over the world. Scientists, people investigating vaccines, biologists, bankers, witnesses. They're doing a lot of murdering to keep this program going forward, shutting people up. Why and in what way temporary? Communism is temporary. What did this far-sighted master strategist of revolution see as a successor to communism? Is it not disturbing enough that a machine dedicated to liquidating all opponents, wiping out the nations as such and the best blood of the races, and blending the remnants into a faceless brown slob? Is it not disturbing enough that this communist machine already enslaves nearly half the people of the world and is armed with hydrogen bombs? The Hind prophecy of the destruction of Russia, nearly 100 years before the event, is so revealing and so amazing as to justify quoting at some length. Note the picture of nationless, raceless world, one flock and one shepherd with an iron staff. Communism, though little discussed now, and loitering in the hidden garrets on miserable straw pallets, is the dark hero destined for a great, if temporary, role in the modern tragedy. It would be war, the ghastliest war of destruction. The second act is the European and the world revolution, the great duel between the destitute and the aristocracy of wealth. So that's going to be the big battle between the people with wealth and all the people, if the economy keeps getting worse, sliding down, the destitute. I do not know, but I think they're eventually, evidently, the great sea serpent Britain will have its head crushed. One free shepherd with an iron staff and a shorn alike, bleeding alike human herd. The future smells of Russian leather, blood godlessness, and many whippings. I should advise our grandchildren to be born with very thick skins on their backs. Wow, that was a pretty interesting opening. Page 2. If communism is only temporary, what is to be the ultimate novus order seclorum? That's on the dollar bill. Marx and Hind accomplished their aim. The new order of society, if the successors to the Jewish revolutionaries, Marx and Hind, accomplished their aim, who are to be the masters of the new order, and what do they want to do with our children and grandchildren? Think about that. The kids, and then our kids' kids. What a future they're trying to bring about. Horrible. It goes without saying that no man can escape concern about such a scheme if it has powerful backing. For years, I have felt that somewhere there must be a master plan showing what Hein and his fellow planners had in mind for us. After communist monsters have killed out several generations of what they rightfully called the leadership personnel, all who might have the intelligence, skill, and courage to resist. Leadership personnel, all who might have the intelligence, skill, and courage to resist. But I little expected ever to have this ultimate master plan, this chapter beyond the Communist Manifesto, in my hands. So there's a document called Communist Manifesto. You can probably Google that and find it on the internet. So Robert Williams here, discovered this book called The Jewish Utopia. I said earlier I wasn't sure whether he discovered it or someone else, but it says here he did. So he has the book in his hands and he reads it. Let's see what he says. I have never seen anything comparable, for this small book sketches the general outlines of the ultimate goal hundreds of years ahead, toward which all the various activities of the Zionists and their liberal dupes are wittingly and unwittingly contributing. Zionism from Talmud to Torah, and Torah. Zionism from Talmud and Torah, two Bibles or books of the Jews. Yet the book was not marked secret. It was in plain English and in the library of the University of Texas. And a friend has found a copy in the Library of Congress, Washington, D.C., supposedly a copy which was filed with applications for copyright in 1932. It is a book of 118 pages, plus preface, notes, bibliography, biography, entitled The Jewish Utopia. Not a Jewish utopia, but The Jewish Utopia, by Michael Higger, a university professor, published by the Lord Baltimore Press, Baltimore, Maryland, 1932, copyright in the same year by the author. And if you watched part 1 and part 2 of this series, 67, Freemasonry and Satanism, you saw what was said in that book. I read from the pages, some of it from that book and some from Robert's interpretation. It is largely couched in esoteric language, which all Jewish revolutionaries have used throughout known history, language found even in their Torah, the books of Moses, and which Jewish writers imparted to communist literature. To use their use of words, can't spit the words out today, their use of words which you and I take to mean one thing, but which their followers understand as meaning something else, a system which our people little suspect, almost guarantees the security of the document. So they kind of write in such a way that a lot of people read it and probably wouldn't understand it unless you were a student of these activities. Here at last is a complete plan of the Zionists, in their own words, for world domination. The author speaks of the righteous and the just. He says they shall inherit the earth. He quotes the prophets, the book of Moses, etc. Who would suspect he had political revolution and total conquest in mind? You know, what's interesting after the fact, like World War I, we know that Rothschilds made a deal with Lord Balfour of England, the UK, because England was losing the war with Germany. Probably all prearranged. And Rothschilds wanted to get legal access to Palestinians' land. So he made a deal with Lord Balfour, who was representing England, that if the Rothschilds supplied money and brought the United States into the war, then England would support annexing the Palestinians' land and giving it to Rothschilds to create the State of Israel. That's World War I. So there was a deal made. And what they did to try to bring that deal about was create the League of Nations, which they couldn't gain control of. The Jewish Zionist folks, the banksters, Rockefellers, Rothschilds. So anyways, England did win the war. And England reneged on the problem and wouldn't sell out the Arabs. So they needed to have World War II. And again, that was all prearranged. Prior to World War II, there was a Great Depression in the United States. The president was configuring factories for war instead of industrial equipment, tractors, trucks. So it was all planned, World War II. And we have that book, Who Financed Hitler, by the Pools, and many other books that detail both World War I and World War II were part of the plan to get bigger bites and control of the world. Topple governments, rob people. It's like a mafia criminal activity, and these people use the governments and the laws to do their bidding, to take control, to steal the wealth. That's World War I and World War II, and the Vietnam War, and the Korean War, Afghanistan after 9/11, Iraq, and all the other countries they overthrew, and the Ukraine. Everything, if anybody just pays attention, everything is moving forward according to plan. And there's no reason to suspect. Matter of fact, you'd have to almost be classified as a fool if you didn't know that something is coming. They're telling us every day. Soros, George Soros, says it'll be the culmination of his life's work when the United States is destroyed. They say this stuff. Rockefeller said, and you can watch videos and see all this, that if people say that I'm trying to create a new world order, and if that's the accusation against me, I'm proud of it, and it's true. Rockefeller said it. Ted Turner, Gates, Bill Gates, said that they want a huge population reduction. The Prince of England. There's just too many books. This is number 67 in my series, and we've looked at over 100 books. We've got hundreds of hours of evidence. There's something looming, something coming. Back to the book. So the righteous will inherit the earth, and according to Mr. Higger, Professor Higger, who wrote the Jewish Utopia, the righteous are to be Zionist Jews. Now, what is Zionist Jews? It's Jews who want to rule the world. You can equate it to basically a mafia boss, a kingpin, crooks, thieves. This is what the author says repeatedly, on page after page. And note that this book was not the creation of a Jewish professor, Michael Higger. And note that this book is not the creation of a Jewish professor, Michael Higger. He merely compiled it. It is the sum total of the prophecies, teaching, plans, and interpretations of the foremost rabbis and Jewish tribal leaders of the past 2,500 years. Since the time of the oral law and the beginning of the Babylonian Talmud, where it's double standard for Jews and non-Jews. Mr. Higger says, even those Jews who fail to enter into the program of the Utopia, which he reveals to be the same program of socialism, brotherhood, and internationalism, as that of the Zionist, and involving much also that is communist, will be denied the utopia. So the Jews who fail to enter into the program will be denied the utopia. Even the non-conforming Jews shall perish along with the rest of us. On page after page, Mr. Higger's Jewish Utopia unfolds the ultimate order. Some mighty force with a ruler from the house of David. That's King Solomon's temple, and the King David way back then, King Solomon way back then, had a magic ring with six-pointed star, which is on the flag of Israel, which he called forth demons, and that's how he got his power. So he had interdimensional communications with fallen angels or something. Maybe Lucifer himself. So a ruler from the house of David on the throne, so this would probably be some kind of antichrist character, is to take control of every life, every shekel's worth of property, every acre of land, every nugget and coin. No child may live, none may be born if the powers object. And the regard in which the Jewish utopia is held by the Rabbinic may be surmised from the printed Texas University Library seal inside the front cover, see photograph, which says the book was presented by the Kala of Texas rabbis in 1939 to the Abraham Sheeter collection of Hebraic and Judaic of the University Library. I stated earlier that the book was in plain English. The fact is, it is addressed throughout to students familiar with the Talmud, the teachings of the foremost rabbis of Jewish history. It was not in the library proper, but in the Abraham Sheeter collection, to which one may have access only by special permission. We shall see presently the plan in detail. We would dismiss the entire book as a daydream by an unbalanced mind, but for the facts of history, including current history, in which the socialistic man-trap has caught this and other countries and people and is steadily sucking their blood. The Jewish machine has men in the most powerful positions, protected by the cowardice of leaders who fear to be called anti-Semites. Apparently, a good many Jews themselves are now fearful of the impending bloodshed. There are many who realize that they have found the promised land, their utopia here in the United States. In the tolerant, benevolent United States. Mr. Higger says these Jews, those Jews, who do not knuckle under and who are not tall and handsome, will be weeded out. While our first concern is for the survival and continued freedom of our children and grandchildren, we ought to find helpful allies among the Jews. And I've been saying that. There are a lot of smarter people in the world than me, obviously. And a lot of the Jewish people, because of their history and teaching, know a lot more than me. And they're aware of these sinister activities. And it might behoove them to start sticking their necks out and start talking and waving the flag and saying, hey, people, wake up. They need to start alerting people more than many of them have already been doing. There's many alternate websites on the internet. Sometimes it's hard to tell who the good guys are and who the shells are. I've been having to be much more cautious lately when I watch videos, and the Planet X information, fear-mongering is out there crazy right now. September 8th, 2015. They're saying September 23rd, it's going to crash in the Atlantic Ocean. How would they know that now, where it's going to crash? With the Earth turning, if they see it coming in. I suspect it's going to be a man-made nuclear explosion to be able to get everybody to believe it was Planet X so that they can institute martial law and say because of the rioting and all that they have to confiscate the guns. Then anybody who wants to spend any money or do anything or work will have to get the mark of the beast. It's all prophesized. So it'll all be a trick, a deception. And all those fear-mongering videos are preparing everybody. UFOs, aliens, Ebola, tsunamis, nuclear war, crashing the dollar, stock market, bird flu, on and on. Preparation for something. Mr. Higger says those Jews who do not knuckle under and who are not tall and handsome will be weeded out. While our first concern is for the survival and continued freedom of our children and grandchildren, we ought to find it helpful allies among the Jews. Several million Russian children and many millions of adults have been beaten to death, shot and starved by the insane Marxist machine called Bolshevism or communism, and the Zionist, communist, and their foolish liberal dupes are far advanced with the Marxist social program in this threatened republic. Should be little doubt in anybody's mind that there's stuff going on in the United States that's highly suspicious. It looks like it's part of some big plan. Why is the all-seeing eye Horus, the son of Isis and Osiris, on the dollar bill? And the pyramid of Egypt, the religion of the pharaohs, occultism, magic, that's what they did back then. Common knowledge. But a lot of people are so uneducated, they don't know common knowledge. I'm sure people have heard of the burning of witches at the stake, the Inquisition by the church, where they were chopping off heads and hanging people and burning them at the stake everywhere. You would like to think civilization has advanced, but as Dr. Stephen Greer says in his serious disclosure, UFO hearings and information, that they want to bring about a new civilization on Earth. So what do they have to do? Get rid of the current civilization? Is that the plan? Where they're all tall and handsome and blonde? The aim. Professor Higger states his aim in the first paragraph of his preface. For my main problem is to reconstruct an ideal social life on Earth. As pictured by the rabbis of old. An ideal society among the family of oil nations, OJ nations, whatever that means. An ideal society among the family of OJ nations, as visualized by the prophets, although not realized as yet, will ultimately be achieved. Nations will come, nations will go. Dogmatic Christianity has come, dogmatic Christianity will go. Isms have created nations, isms will destroy nations. Capitalism has brought happiness and woes to mankind. Communism may bring its paradise and hells to mankind. Doctrines have shaped the destinies of peoples. Doctrines may bring destructions to peoples. But the millennium will come only when the nations of the earth direct their efforts towards the vision of the prophets and make function the teachings of Amos, Hosea, and Micah. Do Professor Higger and Talmudic rabbis interpret the prophets as do the Christians? Or do they believe that the Jewish prophets of the Old Testament were trying to keep their people dedicated to a religion of conquest? A religion of conquest. That would be, oh my God moment. But here in the United States, we know, as Prime Minister Sharon said, we control the USA. And even Henry Ford in 1920 and 1930 bought the Dearborn Independent newspaper in Dearborn, Michigan, I believe, and was trying to expose all the things I'm talking about now, because all the media controlled by the Zionists, they wouldn't tell the truth. The complete takeover of America by these Zionist, maybe non-Jewish people. A Jewish utopia begins where Wells left off. It starts with the world as the basis of a new social life. From that viewpoint, the rabbis pictured first a scheme of transvaluation of spiritual, intellectual, and material values, and a complete spiritual transformation. Having laid this foundation of the new ideal world, the Jewish idealists proceed with the rest of their plan and complete the superstructure of their utopia. In that part of the structure, there are, to be sure, a few common elements. So here's a copy, I showed you this before, of the inside cover of the book he discovered. Moving on, page 6. All right. Cooperation supplementing competition in this new social order, a toil of industry being reduced to a minimum, and thus permitting a higher culture and intellectual life. That sounds good, but for whom? Obviously, some catastrophic change is in store for the world. And remember, Robert Williams here was an intelligence officer in the military. And then in his later part of his life, he was writing books and had a publication newsletter. So he was somebody who spent a lifetime probably becoming educated as to world activities. Sinister world activities. Obviously, some catastrophic change is in store for the world. Isms will destroy nations, and ism has destroyed Russia in our lifetime. Communism, capitalism. That is a secret organization successfully promoted an ism as a device for undermining and capturing and then gradually destroying the Russian people, their culture, economy, religion, and already to a great extent their best racial stock. From the beginning to the end, the Jewish utopia emphasizes that what the rabbis, the Talmud, and the Old Testament were talking about was an earthly regime, not a spiritual one, but an ideal political, racial, economic, and social era. From the Jewish standpoint, here on earth. And it is to be a one-world state conforming to a single ideology. You can almost equate it to a pirate ship. You got the captain pirate, and everybody else has to do what they're ordered to do. Big pirate planet. With the Jews as the captain, and everybody else, like the Hunger Games movie. Do what you're told. Even fight in the arena to the death for their entertainment. They did that in the past. Will they do that in the future? Are they doing it? Plato is chiefly concerned with what will hold the ideal city together. So that was an ancient philosopher, Plato. The rabbis, on the other hand, are mainly interested in that ideology which will hold the whole world in the universal state together. So they have a master plan to take control of the world and a master plan on how to keep control of the world so they can live in utopia. And I suspect they're not going to try to make life very comfortable for everybody else when they consider everybody else animals. And with this many books that I have reviewed for the last 100 years, even H.G. Wells and Albert Pike in Morals and Dogma, the Bible for the Freemasons, they look down on all of us non-initiated, illuminated people or non-Jews. They call us profane, cattle, goyim. And right now they think there's too many of us. They don't need this much cattle, we people. So they have a plan to murder a lot of them, us. Might behoove us to pay attention. This concept of the Jewish religion as a conquering ideology, preparing the world for the Jewish-dominated military political state here on earth, is not held by all the rabbis, but it is the Talmudic interpretation of the utopian shows. So a lot of rabbis and Jews, Shepherdetics and others, have been fighting this. Probably a lot of them have been destroyed. So you got this spin-off Jewish organization called Zionism, Illuminati controlling the Freemasons and Rosicrucians and all the other Babylonian mystery school cults. That's what they are, cults. They worship the devil, Satan. It goes by many names: Lucifer, Baal, Ra, Osiris, Horus. It involves witchcraft, interdimensional masters, spirit guides. Like I said before, we are all spiritual beings in these biological bodies. Some of us have a propensity, a desire to do good. Treat our fellow man like Jesus preached, like we would like to be treated. And some of us, like Aleister Crowley and Hitler and Rothschild and these Talmudic Zionist Jewish folks, are more like wolves and want to control everything. And some of the activities they're into are just downright psychopathic, insane. Especially the pedophilia and child sacrifice and human sacrifice and homosexuality that they're promoting, that a lot of the movie stars and famous people confess to the gross goings-on. Gross. Grotesque. The author hints that his paradise will be a socialistic order, for it is to begin where Wells left off, H.G. Wells. We went over the book, The Open Conspiracy. Notice how everything connects. A socialist idealized socialism. A socialist regimented world order would kill the spirit. Can you imagine? You can't leave a farm field your whole life? Have a little bunk to sleep in? Would that kill the spirit? Dry up the ambitious. Chain the imagination of the highly individualistic Anglo-Saxon and his kinsmen of the Western world. And likewise his friends in Asia, the Japanese and the Chinese. Obama met with, or was said he met with, but last week I guess he went to Alaska. And it was said on these videos, the news I saw, there were 5 Chinese warships off the coast of Alaska. So this one video I watched theorized, the narrator, reporter, investigator, theorized that Obama met with the Chinese leaders, and the speculation is there's a planned World War III event coming, amongst all the other crazy things they're saying, like Planet X. But what are they going to fake? We know they're going to fake something. They got Project Bluebeam, which I guess could put Jesus' face in the sky talking to all the people. They got the Beast computer. They're already microchipping everybody. demanding that everybody take a vaccine, but they're not going to tell everybody what's in the vaccine. That sounds suspicious, if not insane. I could go on with examples for a while. Alright, back to the book. So H.G. Wells and the Open Conspiracy, I did a couple videos ago, a series ago. If you haven't seen them, watch them. H.G. Wells, this is 1928 that he just said all the things he said. In the books he wrote, The Time Machine. A couple horrible books. Alright, who is to judge? Higger says the term righteousness has all but lost its meaning in the modern world, and that the Jewish utopia is built upon that very term, or idea, the righteousness. The kingdom of God in this world will come only when suffering mankind passes through the gates of righteousness. But we must ask, by what standards righteousness is to be judged? The Christian expects God and his own conscience to be judge of righteousness. The Anglo-Saxon, the Negro, the Japanese surely would not want to be judged righteous or unrighteous according to the wishes, ambitions, or whims of this worldly Jewish authority. On the other hand, we could hardly expect ardently pro-Jewish Jews, including Talmudic rabbis, in their paradise to cede power to the ardent Christians, individualistic Norsemen who cherish their personal freedom, or the art-loving Mediterraneans who likewise must give vent to creative yearnings and who like a leisurely, regimentated life. I guess we all like our leisurely, regimentated life. Me, I spent a lot of years sailing my sailboat while running my business. I'm very thankful to have all those good times, and music and sailing and friends and parties. And little did I know this stuff was happening at those moments. They were preparing and working towards the demise of America, and apparently Europe with the European Union. Hence the Jewish regimentators are sure to encounter resistance, you think? For mankind should be divided into two, and only two distinct and unmistakable groups, namely righteous and wicked. To the righteous would belong all that which God's wonderful world is offering. To the wicked will be nothing. And guess who the wicked are? Anybody who's not a Jew. These people. In the future, the words of Isaiah in the language of the rabbis will be fulfilled. Behold, my servants shall eat, but ye shall be hungry. Behold, my servants shall drink, but ye shall be thirsty. Behold, my servants shall rejoice, but ye shall be ashamed. This is the force of the prophecy of Malachi, when he said, Then shall ye yet again discern between the righteous and the wicked, between him that serveth God and him that serveth him not. So again, you got to serve their God to be righteous. This living person from a descendant of King David, when they rebuild King Solomon's temple, which I showed you in previous videos, that they had built small-scale models, the Freemason, and they were on display with all the Freemasons in a circle, showing the newly rebuilt King Solomon's temple. And we went over the Freemasonic handbooks, and we know they talk about Jerusalem and King Hiram and all that. It's all founded on Jerusalem and this stuff. And even in the Protocols of Zion, the author of that says they created the Freemasons to be like spies in all the countries all over the world. A hidden hand. That's one of their symbols, a hidden hand. You'll see like Napoleon and everybody with their hand hidden halfway in their coat or shirt. That's called the hidden hand. Look up hidden hand images, you'll see. Most of your famous people are doing the hidden hand sign. If you go to court, and the judge is probably a Mason, just hide half your hand and he'll know that you're a Mason. Maybe let you off. Crazy? They have other signs too. And here's one. It's like, I surrender. And the judge will know what that means. Stuff you learn. All right, moving on. But who is to direct the hand which marks on your forehead and mine, on the forehead of each of our children and our loved ones, righteous or wicked? Remember, they have the mark of the beast, 666. They've been chipping people. School children, California, Texas, Florida. And if you don't take the chip, you can't have access to the library or the cafeteria. Crazy? Look it up. Don't believe me. Who is to say who may own property and who must die of thirst and starvation? When they killed 100 million, some say, or more, people in Russia after the Russian Revolution in 1917 by the Bolshevik Jewish folks, which was all orchestrated and controlled by the banksters, the people who own the Federal Reserve today, the Illuminati, headster, leader, Rothschilds and Rockefellers and Morgans and Chases and Schiffs and all these other big family names. And they killed a lot of those people in Russia by starvation. Crazy thing. But people don't know this. If they knew, maybe they would think differently. Take action. Be concerned. Who is to say who may own property and who must die of thirst and starvation? Who is to dictate such conformity? Who is to deny us our own right to choose? Notice that Professor Higger considers that the Jewish prophet Malachi used the term righteous as referring to the same persons to whom he, Higger, and the nationalistic rabbis would apply it today. Righteous according to the standards, aims and desires of the leaders who build towards a Jewish paradise, a Jewish world order. This is not the Christian interpretation of Malachi, M-A-L-A-C-H-I, probably saying it wrong, and the other prophets, Jews though they were. The Talmudic interpretation inspires the Jewish flocks to believe that the prophets were addressing their appeals to their own people, trying to whip them into unity and consecrating devotion to the building of a Torahish world order. The Talmud tells the Jewish flocks that Moses was their militant conquering hero, and that the Mosaic law, which says love thy neighbor, is for the Jews only. It shows the Jewish people are not bound by any moral requirement in dealing with Gentiles. That's us. The law Moses gave unto us as a heritage is a heritage for us, not for them. So when they said treat others as you want to be treated, that's for them dealing with each other, but not dealing with we goyim, the cattle, which they may do as they wish with. There are two Talmuds, the Babylonian and the Jerusalem or Palestinian Talmud. Any reference to the Talmud means the Babylonian Talmud, unless otherwise stated, for the other is rarely used. The Talmud consists of many huge volumes. The English translation of it, from which I have many photostats showing how the Jews are free to deceive and outwit the non-Jews, except where there is a danger of reprisal. And now apparently is available for purchase by libraries and possibly by Gentile individuals. There is also a single volume of considerable size called the Shulchan Aruch, a compilation of accepted teachings that from the Talmud, which volume is in common use among rabbis and seems to be available in most big city libraries. Be interesting to read that. Ye are called men, But the Goyim Gentiles are not men, but beast. I guess that's in their book, the Talmud. Baba Mizef, FOL 114b. These quotations are translations from the 9-volume German language edition of the Babylonian Talmud in the Library of Congress, Washington, D.C. So they're saying the Jews are called men, but the Goyim Gentiles are not men but beast. Library of Congress, in their Bible, glorifies stealth and deception. The Talmud is a many-volume compilation of Jewish history and translations and the teachings of the ancient rabbis. So the Talmudic rabbis consider Moses a great military commander. By their interpretation, Moses kept the children of Israel in the wilderness 40 years so as to discipline his flock, raise up an army, and train it to goose step. And of course, the Old Testament does say that Moses' soldiers fell on the unsuspecting villagers and annihilated them, men, women, and children. The book of Moses plainly glorifies this slaughter and the theft of the land from the unsuspecting Gentiles. Read especially the books of Numbers and Deuteronomy for additional examples of how the Jewish adherents should take what they want. So their Bible tells them to take what they want. And if we remember Henry Ford's books, it's 4 of them I have already, excerpts from the newspaper, the Dearborn Independent. They compiled it into 4 books, maybe more. But these Yiddish Zionist Jews from the Russia area, Poland, all around there, Ukraine, were shipped to barracks and camps all over Europe and trained to come to the United States, exclusively during the 1920s, plus or minus. And they were invading New York, and they were a big problem. They were taking over businesses and companies. They were ruthless. They were like the mafia. They were arrogant. They were insulting. And Congress in the United States had congressional hearings on the Jewish problem. Well, anyways, these people are pretty much taking over, as we know, with Bush and Obama, all of their advisors and leaders of the Homeland Security and National Defense and Secret Security agencies and all this are dual citizens from Israel and the United States. So there's this many Jews compared to the whole population in the United States, but yet they control everything. That should be a little scary. And they have plans, as we're reading. The book of Moses plainly glorifies this slaughter of theft of the land from the unsuspecting Gentiles. Read especially the books of Numbers and Deuteronomy, I said that. And it says here that the Jew adherents should take whatever they want. And we took all the cities, and we utterly destroyed them, as we did unto Sihon, king of Heshbon, utterly destroying the men, women, and children of every city. Deuteronomy 3-4-6. So Deuteronomy 3-4-6. Go look it up in your Bible. Utterly destroying the men, women, and children of every city. And they are destroying all the Palestinians. They are causing all the conflicts in the Middle East. We know from reading the newspaper, all of the Arabs are fleeing for their lives, causing huge difficulties for all the countries in the area. So they are vacating the premises of Arabs, a territory the size of the United States in the Middle East, all the countries everywhere. The people, and apparently they drive through the neighborhoods with bullhorns, telling the people they're going to be murdered if they don't flee for their lives. But they don't see that in the American newspaper. I made a comment and told the truth on one article about the immigration problem in Europe right now. I explained the truth in about 2 paragraphs, and I got some ugly remarks and many thumbs down. I was pushing some buttons. I was getting people angry by telling the truth. And we took all the cities. We utterly destroyed them. Moving on. Not only Zionism, but communism, too, acquired much of its hatred of Christians. And all their documentation talks about destroying the Christians for the last 100+ years. So all the people out there who think that Christians are haters and are bad, you've been programmed to think that. They've been doing the propaganda. Everything from cartoons to news and school teachings. I had 2 boys in school, and they came home in one of their books, and there was an inserted sheet that said Jesus was a myth. They'd taken over the schools. They said they were going to take over the schools and do this. Hatred of Christians, from the spirit of hatred, kept alive by the rabbis in the ghettos of Europe and Russia. And the constant repetition of mine enemies from the old Bible. And ye shall be saved from your enemies, and let thine enemies be scattered, and let them that hate thee flee before thee. And I don't hate Jewish people. I'm not particularly pleased with all this evil goings on, satanic, luciferic rituals, and pedophilia, and murdering people, and trying to take over the world and destroy everybody. Those people who are involved in all that, yes, I wish they would go burn in Hades. Who doesn't? Do we all want to have our lives ruined, and our health and our wealth and our jobs and marriages and children? So yeah, if they could take all these evil folks doing the evil things they're doing today and have an elevator to the center of the earth and send them there, that might be a good thing. You think? Gotta have a sense of humor on this. The master race concept, the zeal for conquest, and self-adulation were kept alive in the ghettos for their interpretation of the Torah. And it shall come to pass that the Lord thy God will set thee high above all the nations of the earth. Deuteronomy 26:19. The Lord shall establish thee as a holy people. Deuteronomy-9. Now remember, the Old Testament is the Old Testament, before Jesus. And when Jesus came, the Old Testament was tossed aside, and there's a New Testament. So there was a set of rules by God before Jesus, and there's a set of rules by God after Jesus. So you can't have both sets of rules. These people are trying to live by the Old Testament, not the New Testament. They denied Jesus. They told Pontius Pilate, let it be on our heads, because Pontius Pilate didn't want to kill Jesus, the leader of the Romans. And he said so. He said, I don't want this on my blood, my head, killing the Son of God. And they said, let it be on our heads and our children's heads. The Jews said that. Read St. Mark, first 5 or 6 pages. Some of the things that Jesus was doing. Incredible. It was good. He was healing people, helping people. Case after case after case. And the word got out through all over Jerusalem in the area about all the help he was helping people who were sick, diseased, blind, deaf, possessed. And they want you to hate that Jesus. Why? They didn't like his attitude of being kind and good to everybody. Because remember, they were the money changers. They were the rulers. They were the masters. And to be told that they had to be fair upset them to no end. My interpretation. Book of Rick, Part 1. The master race concept, the zeal for conquest, self-adulation, were kept alive in the ghettos from their interpretation of the Torah. Read also in Exodus how Moses and his fellow Jews borrowed jewelry and other valuables from the Egyptians. The day before they slipped out of Egypt, they did not return the valuables. We may sympathize with the racial or tribal pride of the Jewish men. Historians now say that the Hittites, whose peaceful villages were thus attacked, were a fair, blonde people speaking a language so much like the early Germans that many words were identical. The Hittites, like the Germans, 1300 years or more BC, also knew the secret of working iron. So here's a picture of the book that was discovered in the Texas Library. The Jewish Utopia. Alright, we'll read some more. I hope this stuff is interesting and helpful to understand who is behind the New World Order, the New Age, the propaganda, the chaos and anarchy, the fear of the future, all the things that they were saying that can happen. They're using it as mind control on us, putting people like Miley Cyrus and Lady Gaga and Beyonce out there, Madonna and her gross activities. Oh my God. And making everybody believe that there's no God and hating Jesus and trying to promote everybody to accept transgenderism. And then, of course, the new word I learned was pansexual, which I guess you can have sex with everybody and everything. These are all Sodom and Gomorrah type activities where the whole city was destroyed. God is real. We are spiritual beings in a biological body. So I would suspect that God is a spiritual being. And for some good reason, who you are, who I am, we were given the opportunity to live on this earth. And what we do with it is our choice, good or bad. And I suspect if you choose the dark side, you probably won't be going to paradise or heaven. Just my opinion. Alright, moving on. They resented the presence of a non-Jewish woman in the tent of one of their brothers. But the example of bloody fanaticism shown when they stoned the couple to death because the woman was not a Jewish is a strange example indeed to come from those who cry loudest for brotherhood. And also these people the propaganda from the newspapers are trying to make the Muslims, Arabs, out to be evil people. That's for our edification. They want us to believe that. But look what they did here. They stoned the couple to death because the woman was not Jewish, because she was with a Jewish man. It's a strange example indeed to come from those who cry loudest for brotherhood, from us to them, and who are the first to condemn such race pride in non-Jews. And this is a big issue, if you remember, in the recent book I just did, the American Jew who moved to Israel. And much more evidence does say that they still, you can't marry a Jewish person in Israel. Whatever the Christians may think of the intent of Moses, the Talmud teaches the Jews to believe that Moses was talking only to the ancestors, not to the Goyim. The Talmud thus indicates that when Moses said, "Love thy neighbor as thyself," he meant love thy Hebrew neighbor. Thou shalt not steal from thy Hebrew neighbor. If this is what many Jews believe, and if the Torah is the core of their religion, very well, it is their privilege to worship as they please, even if they plan thereby to annihilate us. But let us open our eyes and defend ourselves. We must not blame them if we let a small tribal group bring about our destruction. The Talmud is still the authoritative and practical guide of the great mass of Jews. Still not all the rabbis accept the Talmud, and it is in its glorification of secrecy and cunning, and its incitation of bloodletting and conquest. Rabbi Elmer Berger, for instance, repudiates both the Talmud and the Torah. In his Partisan History of Judaism, New York, 1952, he attacks the Book of Moses as expressions of nationalistic fanaticism, only partially based on historical fact. He shows that modern Zionism springs from this ancient Zionism. So Zionism is ancient. Mr. Higger leaves no doubt of his meaning in using the word righteous. The word as here used is a Kabbalistic esoteric term. The Kabbalah, magic, occult. The whole substance of the text shows that the righteous are those nations and individuals who work with and for the Zionist world program. It's something I highlighted that's in the bottom here, little asterisks. Rabbi Berger accepts prophets A&A about 1947. He told a closed meeting of delegates to the convention of the American Council of Judaism, a small anti-communist and anti-Zionist group, God promised us world priesthood. Their program apparently is only a missionary ambition to Judaize the world by open and legitimate missionary methods. Rabbi Berger and the Christian missionaries evidently are not bent on destroying all who refuse to knuckle under. So apparently this Jewish utopia, they will destroy everybody who doesn't buckle under. Okay, it says here, Atlantic Ocean and from the Indian Ocean to the North Pole, making righteous or wicked on the forehead of each one. I guess that would be the mark of the beast. We should then be on the right road towards solving the major problems that burden so heavily the shoulders of suffering humanity. For mankind should be divided into two, and only two, this is the Jewish utopia now, distinct and unmistakable groups, namely righteous and unrighteous. Righteous and wicked. To the righteous would belong all that God's wonderful world is offering. To the wicked, not being a Jew, would belong nothing. In the future, the words of Isaiah in the language of the rabbis will be fulfilled. Behold, my servants shall eat, and ye shall be hungry. Behold, my servants shall drink, but ye shall be thirsty. And behold, my servants shall rejoice, and ye shall be ashamed. So I guess we're going to be hungry, thirsty, and ashamed. When will this world become a vineyard? When the Holy One, blessed be, he will raise the position of the righteous who are degraded in the world. The Jewish utopia. All the treasures and natural resources of the world will evidently come in possession to the righteous. So they're going to own everything. And lastly, on the bottom here, the above paragraph is page 12 of the Jewish Utopia. It says that the righteous will possess the world and the wicked will starve. Elsewhere, the author makes clear that the righteous are those who support the Zionist program, the wicked those who fail to support it or oppose it. Well, I'm completely opposed of a new world order and being enslaved. You? In Christian theology, Jewish redemption stands for the physical liberation and freedom of Israel. For the people of Israel will attain the height of their spiritual functions and potentialities only through their attainment of material freedom and liberty. Okay, moving on here. Redeeming, then, for the Zionists, redemption, then, for the Zionists, has nothing to do with redemption from sin. Nothing to do with his personal relationship with God and the hereafter. It refers to a political, military, and geographical accomplishment in the setting up of the state of Israel and the liberation and freedom of the Jews. A lot of Jews are opposed to this, as I've said many times, And if you look up Zionism in Images, you will see. Or Rabbi Marvin Antelman's book, To Eliminate the Opate. Opate means the belief and faith in God, which is a comfort to people. And then Henry Mackay, PhD, Jewish author in Canada, wrote Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. He's talking about these people, the Illuminati. These are the Zionist Jews. There is a secret force at work. It would behoove us to wake up. Go look up this document. Don't believe me. I found it free online, printed it out, stuck it in this binder and read it, highlighted it, and reading it to you. And many books and materials that I've gone over. Alright, continuing on. The term liberation and freedom, as used by Zionists, likewise, are consistently misinterpreted by Gentiles, and as is the Jewish term persecution. A study of Jewish revolutions in many countries shows that the word persecution is almost universally used to mean prosecution. Even those Jewish writers who tell in detail about the Jewish revolutionary and seditious activities against the government of their host country brand any punishment of the guilty Jews by the courts of the land as persecution. So when they do stir up the masses to overthrow the leaders of a country, and they get caught in this espionage, they call it, when you prosecute them, they call it persecution. So they think they should be allowed to rile up the masses and burn down companies and windows and kill people and riot in the streets, because that's what they like to do. And apparently they make a lot of money and control over societies by causing these destructive activities. Notice that in the 3-volume History of the Jews in Russia and Poland by Simon Dubnow, D-U-B-N-O-W, one of the foremost Jewish historians, that Dubnow relates with pride many of the subversive, violent movements launched by Jews. He always brands their punishment as persecution. Similarly, the Jewish press and the planted article in the general press in America during the trials of the Jewish communist officials in Russia, Poland, and Hungary during the past few years have treated the trials as persecution rather than prosecution. So I guess they would not like me reading their book and exposing the information. And they would like to probably ruin me or anybody else who gets in the way of their New World Order, controlling the world, enslaving everybody that they allow to live, the ones they don't kill. They would like to destroy anybody working against their plan to dominate the world. All the treasures and natural resources of the world will eventually come in possession of the righteous. That's Mr. Hager. But in the ideal era, the Lord will open all the treasures for the upright, and the unrighteous will suffer. So we non-Jews will suffer. Now we are beginning to catch broad paranormas of the Zionist utopia. The ultimate world order, as longed for by Professor Hager, and the principal rabbinic teachers of the 2,500 years. Ye shall be hungry unless you are among the righteous. All the treasures and natural resources of the world will eventually come into the possession of the righteous. Since only the righteous shall own property, and all the rest of us shall in fact perish, it is important to know who are to be judged righteous and who is unrighteous, which of us are to be among the chosen, enjoying the kingdom of God here on earth. Which of us are to be among the hundreds of millions of human beings denied even food and water? And like I said, if they do pull off some big event, the last thing you want to do, when that bus comes riding through your neighborhood with a bullhorn, come on to the FEMA camp, we have food and water. Or, you know, they issue an order to give up your gun. Once you give up your gun, you're dead. That's why they want to take the guns. No resistance when they proceed with the slaughter of the non-righteous, the non-Jewish people here who think they want to rule the world. Not the good Jewish people who have been trying to warn us. In general, the peoples of the world will be divided into two main groups, the Israelic and the non-Israelic. This is in Mr. Higger's. And Mr. Higger's stuff is in italics. And then the regular print is Robert Williams. So I got to pay attention when I'm reading this, whether it's Mr. Williams speaking or Mr. Higger speaking. Because remember, Mr. Williams is in reading Mr. Higger's material and interpreting it and researching it. So moving on with Mr. Higger here. All the other peoples, on the other hand, will be known for their detestable practices, idolatry, and similar acts of wickedness. So if you believe in Jesus, they're going to say you're an adulterer. Worship idols. They will be destroyed and will disappear from earth before the ushering in of the ideal era. All these unrighteous nations will be called to judgment before they are punished and doomed. The severe sentence of their doom will be pronounced upon them only after they have been given a fair trial, when it will have become evident that their existence would hinder the advent of the ideal era. So our existence will hinder the advent of the ideal era. Thus, at the coming of the Messiah, they got this Antichrist Messiah coming, when all the righteous nations will pay homage to the ideal righteous leader and offer gifts to him, the wicked and corrupt nations, by realizing the approach of their doom, will bring similar presents to the Messiah. Their gifts and pretended acknowledgement of the new era will be bluntly rejected. For the really wicked nations, like the wicked individuals, must disappear from earth before the ideal human society and righteous nations can be established. Now we're back to Mr. Williams talking. That makes it clear. Now we know that unless the United States as a nation joins wholly, in fact and in spirit, with the Israel Zionist movement to promote a new social order, our nation is doomed if the Zionists win. The Zionists call the process of liquidating opposition social surgery. The Zionists call the process of liquidating opposition social surgery. So they have to surgically remove anybody who's telling the truth. In a country of treason and traitors, truth is a crime. Plans for Armageddon. It is Israel and associated nations, the Israelic group, those nations which help build a new social or socialist order, which are to dominate the world. The others must perish. Notice that the sin specifically identified is that of idolatry. But Mr. Higger makes clear that all those who are spared must worship the Torah and the Israelic God in Jerusalem. Hence, idolatry means any other religious faith other than theirs. Higger and his fellow Zionists are not talking in figurative terms. They're dealing in human blood, oceans of it. Now we're back to Mr. Higger here. The unrighteous will suffer a crushing defeat, and Zion will thenceforth remain the center of the kingdom of God. The defeat of the unrighteous will mark the annihilation of the power of the wicked who oppose the kingdom of God and establishment of a new era. This struggle will not be merely the struggle of Israel against her national enemies, but the climax of the struggle between the two general opposing camps of righteousness and unrighteous. A saying in the name of Rab states that the descendant of the house of David will appear as the head of the ideal era only after the whole world will have suffered. Remember, the whole world's got to suffer. They're planning something evil. for a continuous period of 9 months from a wicked, corrupt government, like a historical, traditional, wicked Edom. Now we're back to Mr. Williams, Robert. The author minces no words here. Israel and her allies are to be victors. Israel is to become the center of the kingdom of God, implying that the world is to look on Israel as holy and worship its leader, a descendant of the house of David. Moving on, you remember the account of the Old Testament, the Jewish Bible, which glorifies Jacob's tricking and deceiving his half-brother, Esau, out of his birthright. Esau is always pictured in Jewish literature as a Gentile, and the name is used as a code word for Gentile. Jacob, the code word for a Jew. So they glorify Jacob tricking and deceiving his half-brother out of his inheritance. So when you trick somebody and deceive and rob and steal, they think you're good. That makes you righteous. But if you're a decent, honest person, you're a weakling and dumb animal and need to be destroyed. Backwards. But then again, we are aware that Lucifer, the devil, is a deceiver. Everything is backwards. He lies. Just as it is the nations who oppose or even fail to support Zionist ambitions who are to be destroyed, so it is the individuals failing or refusing to cooperate who must disappear. So if you don't give up your weapons, you don't take the mark of the beast, you must disappear. Who are the wicked? What constitute wickedness? Which is an obstruction to the establishment of the kingdom of God. This is Mr. Higger again. A few rabbinic passages dealing with the subject, however, give a general idea of the meaning of wicked and the wickedness as far as the Jewish utopia is concerned. First, no line will be drawn between bad Jews and bad non-Jews. There will be no room for the unrighteous, whether Jewish or non-Jewish, in the kingdom of God. All of them will have to be disappeared before the advent of the ideal era on earth. Unrighteous Israelites will be punished equally with the wicked of other nations. So like I said, the good Jews are going to be treated as unrighteous. Let Esau whine and wail and protest to the civilized world, and let Jacob raise his hand to fight the good fight. The anti-Semite understands but one language, and he must be dealt with on his own level. Alright, I want to finish this up. The Puron Jews stood up for their lives. American Jews, too, must come to grips with our contemporary anti-Semites. We must fill our jails with anti-Semite gangsters. So we've got here an example of the use of the Jewish code. Words Esau and Jacob is found in a sermon preached by Rabbi Leon Spitz during the Puron observation in 1946. Quoted here from the American Hebrew of March 1, 1946. Okay, let Esau whine, so that would be all of us unrighteous people, and wail and protest to the civilized world, and let Jacob raise his hand to fight the good fight, that would be the Jews. You didn't look at the code words. American Jews too must come to grips with our contemporary anti-Semites. We must fill our jails with anti-Semitic gangsters. We must fill our insane asylums with anti-Semitic lunatics. They would probably call me a lunatic. We must combat every alien, Jew hater. We must harass and persecute our Jew baiters to the extreme limits of the law. We must humble and shame our anti-Semitite hoodlums to such an extent that none will wish or dare to become their fellow travelers. So that was by this Rabbi Leon Spinks to his audience. So anybody who, I guess they think is a Jew hater, and obviously I'm not a Jew hater because I think there's a lot of good Jews, trying to warn the rest of us about these evil plans going on this material I've been reading. Their own words convict them. Of course, their actions for a couple thousand years of wherever they go, they irritated the societies, and they were run out of Europe once. And Henry Ford was publishing all that material, and Congress in the United States was having hearings on the Jewish problem. So there wouldn't be a Jewish problem unless there were people causing problems. Of course, if you say that, they want to put you in an insane asylum or call you a lunatic or in jail and kill you. Okay, back to Robert. There are, of course, no laws against anti-Semitism, except in the communist countries. Anti-Semitism and anti-Catholicism and anti-Protestantism, anti-Irish are not crimes by our laws, though Jewish and liberal members of Congress are introducing such communist-type laws every year and coming closer and closer to getting them enacted as Congress has less and less understanding or of the concern of principles, interfering more and more with the social attitudes and relationships of individuals one to another. Notice that Higger uses a capital G for Gentile. Okay, as used by the Jews, one of the non-Jewish nations of the non-Jewish faith. So they have the United Nations. I'll show you one more thing here. Above is a United Nations ESCO brown man, as we may call him, or it, which I photographed from page 70 of the book United Nations. Blueprint for Peace. Obviously, this raceless, characterless man standing on the world is the UNESCO ideal toward which all of us must work. The blending of all the races of mankind into one composite, raceless, nationless, homeless, characterless, faceless, brown Slav. So they got this goal of creating some kind of one kind of people, which, while producing the propaganda to cause us to blend, quickens the tribal pride of the Jews to keep them from blending. So they want all of us to be one world order, but that, of course, in Israel is going to be separate from that. The statue resembles the art and evidently was done by the Jewish revolutionary Bernard Rosenthal, who also did the famous and infamous trio, The Faceless Family, Mr. and Mrs. Faceless, and Little Faceless, showing parents and children, just like the above, representing the future family. So this is the way they see the human race. And that's why they're promoting all that alternate lifestyle, the gay agenda, homosexual, transgender, pansexual, bisexual, adulterous agenda. So let's just read a little bit here from the Protocols of Zion and end this video. As you have seen how I've been doing this. Protocol number 18. When it becomes necessary for us to strengthen the strict measures of secret defense, the most fatal poison for the prestige of authority, we shall arrange a simulation of disorders or some manifestations of discontents, finding expression through the cooperation of good speakers. So there's simulation of disorders and manifestation of discontents. So I'm thinking Sandy Hook, 911, Boston bombing, all kinds of other crazy things, all the fear-mongering and threats. Round these speakers will assemble all who are sympathetic to his utterances. So they're going to have really good speakers giving the propaganda to the peoples, creating crises, and then sending out a speaker who's going to resolve the crisis. And that's the crisis that they created so that everybody would listen to the guy who's going to resolve the crisis, so they can control the people and steer them towards this one world order. This will give us the pretext for dominacy, prerequisites, and surveillance on the part of our servants from among the numbers of the Goyim police. I'm only reading my highlighted portions. You are aware that we have broken the prestige of the Goy kings by frequent attempts upon their lives through our agents. Blind sheep of our flock, who are easily moved by a few liberal phrases to crimes provided only they be painted in political colors. We have compelled the rulers to acknowledge their weakness in advertising overt measures of secret defense, and thereby we shall bring the promise of authority to destruction. They're going to destroy all of our leaders and our system. Government by fear. That's what it says here. According to the strictly enforced outward appearance, our ruler will employ his power only for the advantage of the nation. Overt defense of this kind argues weakness in the organization of his strength. Overt defense of this kind, argues weakness in the organization of his strength. If a petitioner, so if you've got a bunch of people in your neighborhood and you drop a petition, appears among the people, trying to hand a petition or forcing his way, they thought this out. Through the ranks, the first ranks must receive the petition. So if you try to go give a petition to some leader, they're going to have the guy walled off, and there'll be guards out there, and he'll get the petition from you to take it to the leader. But get this. And before the eyes of the petitioner, pass it to the ruler, so that all may know what is handed reaches its destination, that consequently there exists a control of the ruler himself. So before the ruler gets any petition of yours, it will have to be reviewed and see if they want to hand it to the ruler. With the establishment of official defense, the mystical prestige of authority disappears. Criminals with us will be arrested at the first, more or less well-grounded suspicion. It cannot be allowed that out of fear of a possible mistake, an opportunity should be given of escape to persons suspected of a political lapse of crime. For in these matters we shall be literally merciless. Go and get the Protocols of Zion online free. Print them out like I did. Get a highlighter and do your own review. Protocol number 19. If we do not permit any independent dabbling in the political, we shall, on the other hand, encourage every kind of report or petition with proposals for the government to examine into all kinds of projects for the amelioration of the condition of the people. This will reveal, so that when you do submit petitions, get this, this will reveal to us the defects and else the fantasies of our subjects. So they'll probably want to wipe out people who are intelligent and speaking up and planning things, to which we shall respond either by accomplishing them or by a wise rebuttal to prove the short-sightedness of one who judges wrongly. Sedition mongering is nothing more than the yapping of a lapdog at an elephant. So anybody who complains is like a lapdog trying to bark at an elephant. In order to destroy the prestige of heroism for political crime, we shall send it for trial in the category of thieving, murder, and every kind of an abominable and filthy. So if you do try to go against the grain of their political orders and try to petition, it'll be treated as thieving, murder, and other type of crimes. I'm sure I'm not getting all this correctly, exactly, but I think you get the idea. We have done our best, and I hope we have succeeded, to obtain that the Goyim should not arrive at this means of contending with sedition. It was for this reason that through the press, and in speeches indirectly, in cleverly compiled schoolbooks on history, we have advertised the martyrdom alleged to have been accredited by the sedition mongers for the idea of the Commonwealth. This advertisement has increased the contingent of liberals and has brought the thousands of Goyim into the ranks of our livestock cattle. So all this liberalism and progressivism that they're promoting, that everybody's buying into, this advertisement has increased the contingent of liberals and has brought the thousands of goyim into the ranks of our livestock cattle. That was the end of 19. So that's what they think of all the progressives, liberalism, who are joining their ranks and believing in the New Age and following them into the decadent lifestyle. Join the thousands of goyim into the ranks of our livestock cattle. I'm wondering, do people really want to be livestock cattle and live in this world that we saw here Robert Williams describing in the Jewish Utopia book compiled by Professor Higgins? The plan for the New World Order, the ultimate Jewish utopia, them masters and we slaves. So we move a little bit closer towards maybe finding out some truths. Will people research it? I hope you do. Will people understand it? Do something about it? I hope they do. Rick Miracle reporting.